I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and today we have the facelifted Toyota Corolla Cross. Those of you who've been paying attention will remember that Toyota launched this car just about 2 years ago here in Australia to slip between the Yaris Cross and the RAV4 and offer a more practical alternative to the Toyota CHR. Now, when it arrived, we were expecting it to do very well, bringing a frugal and nippy hybrid powertrain to the segment that wasn't there before. And yet, when we got our hands on the Corolla Cross, although it ticked all the boxes with lovely ride and handling, great fuel efficiency and good packaging, it didn't really sparkle, didn't offer anything special, and it got a third place in our small SUV mega test. Since then, the Hyundai Kona has launched and become the market leader in this segment, and I think Toyota has tried to address the shortcomings of exterior styling and some of the interior specialness with the new car. So today we're going to go through this vehicle, talk about its price increases of $2,000 since launching, and figure out if the new Corolla Cross is worth it and whether or not it can really challenge that new Hyundai Kona in sales charts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. First up, let's cover the biggest changes to the Toyota Corolla Cross, and that is exterior looks. Toyota has added a new front grille, new headlights, and this light bar that links both of the headlights. It looks quite cool, if a little bit more like a slightly anonymous Chinese competitor. And then you come down the side and you find that the rest of the Corolla Cross is pretty much exactly the same. You get new alloy wheels and a new rear clip as well, but this isn't a totally transformative update to the looks. That said, I do think it's been effective because the old, big, chunky Americana grille was something that I never liked. But of course, design is subjective, so tell us your thoughts below. Less subjective though is pricing, and with another $960 increase since the pre-facelift, the Corolla Cross is now nearly $2,000 more expensive across the range than when it launched. And it's not like it was a cheap car at launch either. That means that this car, the Atmos two-wheel drive, is $47,990 before on-road costs, which is nearly $4,000 more than the equivalent Hyundai Kona hybrid. So the value proposition continues to get a little bit worse in the Corolla Cross. I'll flash up some other competitors and their prices on the screen now. But yeah, as you can see, the Corolla really is quite expensive for the segment. And not only for the segment, the Corolla Cross is also nearly as dear as its RAV4 sibling. In XSE, guys, it's only about $1,000 more to go for the bigger car with a more powerful powertrain. While we're still outside, it's worth mentioning that at the rear we have a very slightly different rear bumper, some smoked taillights, new badging, and a bunch of new paint colors as well, including this metallic battleship gray, which I didn't like in pictures, but in person looks quite deep and lustrous. Now, the Atmos we're testing has a standard power tailgate. However, it is one of the slowest, beepiest, loudest tailgates I've experienced in a very long time. It opens up to reveal the same size boot, 425 litres. It's relatively nicely finished. You've got tie-down points, you've got this little pocket over here and a standard load cover too, plus a speaker for the JBL sound system that we'll come back to in a minute. And then you've got a little bit more storage underneath the boot floor, and with this front-wheel drive, which has a torsion beam rear suspension, you get a space-saver spare tyre. Moving up to the all-wheel drive versions that get multi-link means that you don't have a space-saver spare tyre, and you also get a slightly smaller boot. But as for boots, it's pretty big, pretty solid, not quite as large as a medium SUV, but certainly one of the biggest in the small SUV class. Let's first cover off the big physical changes in the Corolla Cross's cabin, because around the center console, Toyota has addressed, I think, some fairly loud concerns about the fundamental design of that car with a new look center console. I think it looks quite good. You've got this ring of ambient light around, and yes, there's a lot of piano black which will scratch up and also attract fingerprints, but at least it looks a little bit more modern than the old Toyota Corolla Cross, which just looked a little bit dated. It's also improved usability with a much better wireless charging tray, which has bumpers to hold your phone in. There's a second spot for another phone that doesn't have wireless charging. And you've also got all of the major buttons that you want to press arranged around the gear shifter, and no switch blanks in this Atmos, which was always a complaint of the previous Corolla Cross, in which the GXL had a whole bunch of very prominent switch blanks. Nice shifter, leather covered. You've got two big cup holders, one very usable, one that has a little bit of encroachment from this armrest here. Speaking of, this armrest is soft, but there's a lot of hard material underneath, so it's actually not super comfortable to rest your arm on for a long period of time. It also closes very heavily with a big thunk. In there you'll find a little bit more covered storage and a 12-volt socket. You also get a USB-C charge port, which is new, but you only get one in the front seat here. Also new are the heated and ventilated seat controls for the Corolla Cross, with 3 stages, and this is the first time you get ventilated seats in the top spec Atmos, along with a heated steering wheel, which was standard before. But the ventilated seats are a really nice addition. That said, Toyota has kind of half-stepped down materials in this car, certainly in the top spec Atmos, which moves from full leather upholstery to semi-leather upholstery. I actually prefer this, however, because at the front here you've got this perforated section, which is easy to clean if you spill food in the car, and then at the back you have this nice sort of knitted cloth feeling section, which is actually a little bit nicer to sit on. It doesn't hold the heat or the cold as much as leather, so I think that's actually a really good idea. You still get power adjustment for the driver, up, down, tilt for the under thigh rest, and also backrest adjustment too, plus lumbar support. But the passenger seat doesn't have any height adjust and is manual, but it's not set as high as in some Toyotas, so I don't find that to be a huge issue. Next, we come on to the rest of the material quality, and you still get soft in front of the front passenger here and on top of the door cards, but just like before, the entire dashboard is black, hard, scratchy materials. And I also noticed while driving there were some buzzers and some rattles, I think coming from behind the screen and also around this air vent over bumps and road imperfections, which I was a bit disappointed by. Technology includes a same size 10.5-inch screen, which is actually starting to look quite small in today's market, but it works okay. No better than before, I don't think, so I haven't had any real long, laggy experiences, which I did get in the pre-facelift Corolla Cross, so there may have been some tweaks there. Luckily, your dual zone climate control is isolated from the touchscreen, so it's still nice and easy to interact with. Plus, you get new 12.3-inch digital dials in front of me as the driver, which do a little bit more than before and still look pretty crisp, pretty legible. Not quite Volkswagen in terms of execution, but not too bad. And then finishing off the Atmos, as before, is this full-length panoramic sunroof, which lets a lot of light into this otherwise very dark, black, and a little bit drab cabin. Onto the back seat, and the Corolla Cross is a bit of a mixed bag. Even though it's one of the largest small SUVs on sale at over 4.4 meters long, it isn't a really huge back seat. And I think a lot of that comes down to the packaging choices made in the front. The dashboard is very far forward. It comes right out to meet the driver and the passenger, which I think means the driving position is pushed back, and therefore you're a little bit compromised in the back seat. Now, I've got heaps of toe room behind my seat, but knee room is a little bit cramped, and it's actually my shins that are rubbing against this chair in front of me. Headroom's also a little bit compromised with this panoramic sunroof, and the headliner feels a bit cheap. That said, at 6'2", I am pretty tall for a back seat, so it's not too bad back here. Certainly good vision out, nice big windows that do go pretty much all the way down, which is good to see. Material quality is similar to the front seat. You've got a leather facing here, so it should be easy to clean if you spill any food on it, but it's not perforated like in the front seats. And then you have cloth where you sit, which is nice because there's no heating or cooling in the back seat here. Material quality up on the doors is scratchy plastic, kind of par for the course for small SUV land, but again, the Corolla Cross is pretty expensive, so I would have loved to see a little bit more attention to detail to that and something that was a little bit elevated. Same problem with the armrest as in the front, where it's soft and squishy, but you can feel straight into the hard material beneath it. That said, you do have some pretty decent amenities, including air vents for both passengers, 2 USB-C charging ports, a fairly low hump in the floor, and a fold-down armrest that's nice and cushioned with a couple more cup holders, giving you 2 spots to store your drinks in the back of the Corolla Cross. So on the whole, space is okay, materials are a little bit below par for the price, and just feels like a little bit of a shrug where some other cars do a bit more with the space they have on offer. Now, this might seem like a little bit of a strange thing to say, but actually the best part of the Toyota Corolla Cross remains how it drives. It's just got this fantastic blend of decent performance, really excellent ride and handling, and slightly improved noise, vibration, and harshness suppression. We'll start with the powertrain, which is basically unchanged. So 2-litre non-turbo petrol engine, a 4-cylinder under the bonnet, allied with one electric motor that drives and another that works as a generator, and an eCVT transmission, which is actually a planetary gear set, and it's actually the motor generator and the engine that augment how much power goes to the wheels. It can be a little bit funky to get used to. Sometimes when you're under a lot of stress, it's definitely a little bit on the noisy side with that slightly thrashy petrol engine coming in. Toyota says it's worked quite hard in the new Corolla Cross to improve NVH, but when I go full throttle, you can still definitely hear a fair bit of that petrol engine. But most small SUVs are like that. It's not an outlier, that's for sure. It's just that sometimes it doesn't quite match up and rise and fall in a natural way. Like when you're accelerating on a freeway on-ramp, it can be a little bit drony, climbing a long steep hill and that sort of thing. But the truth is, it delivers really good power. This car only drives the front wheels, and we timed the 0 to 100k an hour acceleration at 7.5 seconds, which is roughly what you'd expect from a downsized turbo petrol car, and quicker than you'd get from a 2-litre naturally aspirated engine for sure. And it feels quite rapid. The response is good. Normal mode, eco mode, and PWR mode are what this car gets. I'll swap it into normal now out of eco, and the GR Sport, the coming variant, coming in Q4, which we'll have a sample of when that arrives, also gets a special sport mode, which should be interesting. That car also sits 10mm lower on a slightly different suspension tune to this. As for this car, it hasn't changed in terms of ride and handling since the pre-facelift. Same thing, struts up front and torsion beam out the rear for the front wheel drive, and you get a multi-link out the back for all-wheel drive models. And although the all-wheel drive with the multi-link is better and a little bit more slick, comfortable, well-rounded, the torsion bar is not bad at all. This car rides and handles really nicely. The front end is sharp and reliable, it's comfortable, it's consistent, and it just feels like you can make great progress in the Corolla Cross on a country road. The steering helps with that with great confidence and a fairly sharp ratio, but one that is very natural. You might be able to see right now we're at our private test track, and as I turn in, it's one input, look on the exit, one input on the way out, and you're through the corner. It's just something that we drive so many of these new Chinese SUVs that are so scrappy and messy to drive. And yeah, that might not be everything when it comes to why you choose a car, but there's something just so easygoing and confident about the Corolla Cross's ability that means it would just be an easy, long distance country tourer. It'd be really good for that. Certainly feels like a much better car than something like a Mitsubishi ASX, which is another small SUV you see a lot in the countryside. That said, this car isn't all perfect. We'll come back to that noise, vibration and harshness insulation. Toyota says it's worked hard on the roof and a few other areas for the facelifted Toyota Corolla Cross, but in my book, it hasn't really worked. It's still quite a loud small SUV. Something like a Nissan Qashqai Hybrid is a much quieter, more serene drive than this car, especially on the motorway, where we found that although it's not super loud, there is a slightly unpleasant frequency to the tyre noise that does get into the car. On our surface here, which is like a smoothish country road, it's really quite good, but on coarse chip, you can feel it penetrate into the car, and you can also feel it through the steering wheel. Some of that might be to do with the quite sporty tyres fitted to this Atmos variant, which are Dunlop SP Sport Max. They're 225/50 R18s. They don't add much harshness in terms of bump absorption, but I think they do add a little bit in terms of noise, especially on coarse chip roads. One of the complaints we had about the Corolla Cross before was the brake pedal feel. This car seems to be a lot better with a lot less of that grainy unpleasantness between regen and caliper braking, but it's still not the most confident left pedal in the game. But it is much improved, and the stopping power seems to be pretty decent. That was another slight issue with this car in pre-facelift, guys, but it seems to be up there around or about sort of 37 meters stopping from 100 k's an hour when we tested it, which is pretty acceptable for this kind of car. Finally, we come on to the safety features. And this car actually does a great job on safety features. I come back to what I said about how this car goes around corners. It feels confident and unintrusive. It just lets you get on with your day. One input, and it's very much the same thing for safety features. There's no beeping and bonging constantly about speed limits or about driver attention monitoring. You do occasionally get a few ding-dongs from the lane departure alert, but that can be quite easily switched off. It does switch on every time you start the car, but the beeps aren't too incessant or annoying. That said, we do think there could be some work done on the adaptive cruise control programming, which follows cars a long way back and is very reactive and jerky in those reactions. Plus the lane trace assist on this car is quite busy. Like when you're cruising along the motorway, it's constantly making little inputs, and because the steering wheel doesn't have any touch sensors, it is quite often asking for you to make inputs into the steering wheel because it thinks you haven't touched the steering wheel or your hands aren't on the steering wheel, even though your hands are on the steering wheel. They just haven't had to move for a while because the road is really nice and straight. But on the whole, the driver assistance systems and the safety of this car, 5-star ANCAP rated, of course, they're actually really easy to leave on. And I think that makes them much better than, say, a Hyundai Kona or something like a Kia Seltos' systems, which you have to go in and turn off every time you start the car. And that really is the story of the Corolla Cross. It's easy, simple, slips into your life, remarkably good when it comes to ride, handling, and comfort, yet also just generally a little bit dull. So a really, really good choice, but not one you make with any genuine spirit behind it. One of the Corolla Cross's key advantages is running Toyota's hybrid system, which is pretty much class benchmark for fuel efficiency and consistency. The official rating for this car is now 4.2 litres per 100 Ks, and in the real world, you'll easily get below 5 litres per 100. This car we picked up with just 15 kilometres on the odometer though, and I think that may have affected our fuel consumption reading because on our regular test loop, it's showing 5.4 litres per 100 Ks on the screen. We'd expect to see that get better with a couple of Ks on the car because we have done much better than that in the past. Servicing is due every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres at a cost of $255 per visit, so $1,275 over 5 years, which is one of, if not the cheapest in the class. Standard warranty is 5 years or unlimited kilometres, and if you service the Corolla Cross on time, that can be extended up to 7 years. Time for our 100% independent verdict on the new look Toyota Corolla Cross, which remains very much the same as before the facelift. It looks a little bit sharper, has a slightly nicer interior, and a little bit more sound deadening inside, but this is not a transformative facelift. The technology still feels a little old hat, and you can still hear that very vocal hybrid engine when you're making progress. That said, the Corolla Cross remains one of the benchmarks for ride and handling in this class, plus it's got a pretty spacious interior for a small SUV. I can see why more people are buying the Hyundai Kona though. It has extra design spunk and offers greater value. Even though this will have slightly better resale value and also lower running costs, the Hyundai Kona is quite a lot cheaper to buy in spec for spec equivalent. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below, and don't write the Corolla Cross off because even though it's a little bit dull and a little bit boring, it's still a very recommendable and easy to live with car. So let me know your thoughts and hit subscribe to the Chasing Cars YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and thank you very much for watching.